This is the Art Cafe Second Life Building Tutorial Basics Part 4. Today we're going to talk about megaprims. Now, before I showed you that you can have a regular prim by clicking on Build, clicking on the box or whatever shape you want to, and then clicking on the ground, and that reses a primitive object. And I also showed you that you can scale it by stretching it and grabbing one of the handles and making it big. Now, this is a fairly large box. It's 10 meters by 10 meters by 10 meters exactly. Now, the reason why it is this is because Linden Labs has made all their primitive objects be this exact maximum height. Now, if you look around in the world of Second Life, you can see that there's objects that are obviously larger than that. And those were created by using what's known as a megaprim. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of megaprims and why they are the way they are now. Originally, Second Life had unlimited building sizes. You could build a prim as large as you wanted to. However, the people that own Second Life, Linden Labs, they charge people on their islands to have a certain number of prims available. Say you buy like 1,000 prims. That's what's acceptable in your area. You can only have 1,000 prims at any one time. So what people figured out was that the less prims you use in a build, the more you could eventually do later on. So they used really large prims to cover huge areas, and therefore kind of minimize the prim use. So Linden Labs found that out, and they thought to themselves that it'd be better for their business if they limited the size to only 10 by 10, and so that people had to actually use more primitives to cover large areas and to have large shapes. So after a while, they limited the default prim size to only this, hoping that people would use more, and then eventually they would have to buy more for them to be able to place in their world. Now, there's a way around this. It's kind of a loophole, and it's using a megaprim. These are objects that were already built before the programming said that they couldn't have them. So it's not possible anymore to create them, but if you already had them in your inventory, then you still possessed them. So that's how you can create really large areas. It's 100% legal to use. Linden Labs actually sanctions people using it as long as it's one that was made before their programming change. So if you have a megaprim, it's okay to use. And there's a huge difference between literally there's a huge difference between a regular prim and a megaprim, and I'll show you a difference right now. This is the maximum size box from the default. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to back up a little bit, and then I'm going to res a megaprim. Oops. I actually double-clicked on it and I detached it for myself. So I'm going to go find a good sized megaprim. Let's click on this one, and then drag it to the ground. Whoa. It actually trapped me inside of it because it's so huge. I'm going to back up. I'm going to rotate my camera out. And try to scale out some more. And you can see it's very, 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 very large. Just keeps going and going and going and going. So this is good if you have a huge sculpture you want to make, or if you wanted to, say, make a big platform or a building, something like that. If you want to make a city, it just keeps on going and going and going. Now, there's one thing about a megaprim that you can't do, and is that you can't resize it. Because as soon as you scale it, it reverts back to its normal size. What's allowed by the code. See, I clicked on the scaling feature, and all of a sudden it went back towards its default 10 by 10 by 10 size. I didn't damage the megaprim that I have in my inventory, but just this one here can no longer go that high. It's kind of a redundancy thing, so that you have to use the megaprims you already have. You can't modify them. So I'm going to get a smaller megaprim out, so it's one that's a little bit easier to work with. Drag it to the ground. And it should come up here as soon as it reses. Since it's so large, it takes a while. So here's another one. So you can tell that some megaprims have default shapes. Like this one's already a rectangle, and so sometimes you just need to figure out which one is the best to work with. Now you can't, as I said, you can't change the scale, but you can still move it. It still works fine. You can still rotate it, so that works fine. But you can't scale it. That's the one thing you can't do. You can never grab one of these handles and scale it. That won't work. So how do you then modify it and manipulate it? Well, under the Object tab, you can still do your twisting. You can still do your tapering. Still do the top shear. All will still work. You still make it hollow. But one way you can do to kind of manipulate it is you can use the slice tool at the very bottom. The slice tool allows you to shrink them. It kind of cuts the top or cuts the bottom. So you can make your own rough sized object. Say you know that this is the shape you want, and you want it to be huge, but you don't want it to be that tall. You can just cut a little from the top by clicking on the slice and bend tools. And so that's one way, probably the only way you can modify a megaprim.